So here's a scenario I want you to think about for a second. You're sitting at your kitchen table, or maybe you're on your couch, laptop open, phone in hand, and you're going through your bank account. Not because something's wrong exactly. You're not broke. You're not behind on rent. You're fine. You're doing fine. And yet, as you scroll through those transactions, there's this low hum of anxiety that just won't go away. Because you look at the numbers and you think, okay, I made decent money this month. Where did it go? Like, genuinely, where did it go? You're not buying boats. You're not dropping $5,000 on weekend trips. You got a coffee here, a dinner out there, a subscription you forgot about, an impulse buy that felt really justified at the time. And somehow, when you add it all up, there's nothing left to show for it. No growing savings account. No investment account quietly compounding in the background. Just a month that passed and a number that reset back to almost zero, and you're already 2 weeks into the next one before you even catch your breath. I've spent a genuinely embarrassing amount of time thinking about this exact feeling, and why some people seem to escape it while others live inside it for decades. My name is Josh, and honestly, money psychology is kind of my obsession. Why people make the financial decisions they do, what separates the people who quietly accumulate wealth from the people who earn good incomes but never quite feel financially secure, and what the actual turning points tend to look like when someone's financial life starts to shift, not the dramatic lottery win, inheritance, or six-figure raise turning points. The quieter ones, the habit-based ones. And here's what I want to talk to you about today, because I think it's genuinely one of the most underrated ideas in personal finance. There is one specific habit, one consistent, boring, almost suspiciously simple habit, that I've seen change people's financial trajectory more reliably than almost anything else. It costs about $500 a month to maintain. And no, it's not investing in index funds, though that plays into it. It's not cutting your spending, though that's involved too. It's something more structural than both of those things. Something that operates at the level of how you think about money rather than just what you do with it. By the end of this, I think you're going to look at your financial habits a little differently, maybe a lot differently. Let's get into it. Okay, so let me start with something I call the gap problem, because I think it's the root of so much financial frustration that people experience, and yet almost nobody talks about it in these terms. The gap problem is basically this. Most people live in what I'd describe as financial present tense. Everything is about right now. The paycheck that just came in, the bill that's due on Friday, the thing they want to buy this weekend. Their entire financial mental model is organized around the immediate. What's coming in? What's going out? Can I afford this today? And that's understandable, honestly. It's how our brains are wired. We're not naturally built for long time horizons. We're built for the immediate threat, the immediate reward, the thing right in front of us. So when someone says, you should be saving for retirement, your brain hears it, acknowledges it in the abstract, and then files it somewhere under future Jamie's problem, which, to be fair, is relatable. Future Jamie always sounds like someone else's responsibility. But here's where the gap problem comes in. The people who build real financial security, the ones who aren't rich, not necessarily, but who feel genuinely okay about money in a way most people don't, they have a different relationship with time. They've built a gap between their income and their spending, and they've made that gap automatic, protected, non-negotiable. They've essentially created a system where money moves before they can spend it. And that gap, that structural, habitual gap, that's what the $500 a month is about. Let me explain what I mean. So the $500 a month habit isn't one thing. It's actually three things happening simultaneously, and the combination is where the magic, the math, really starts to work. The first piece is $200 a month going into a high-yield savings account, specifically earmarked as what I'd call a friction fund. Not an emergency fund in the traditional sense, though it serves that purpose eventually. I call it a friction fund, because its immediate job is to reduce the financial friction in your daily life. Car registration comes due, friction fund. Dentist appointment you weren't expecting, friction fund. Friend's destination wedding you said yes to without thinking, friction fund. And also, maybe next time, think that one through a little more. The point is, this money sits there specifically to catch the irregular but predictable expenses that trip most people up and send them back to zero every few months. Most people budget for their monthly bills and completely forget that life also bills them in irregular intervals. The car, the medical stuff, the home repairs, the gifts, the travel. These feel like surprises when they hit, but they're actually just life. They were always going to happen. The habit is just acknowledging that and setting money aside in advance. The second piece is $200 a month going into an investment account, an index fund, low cost, boring, wonderful. And I know, $200 a month sounds small. You've probably heard people throw around numbers like max out your 401k, and $200 seems almost silly by comparison. But here's the thing people miss. The habit is more important than the amount, especially in the beginning. You are training your brain to be an investor. You are making the identity shift from someone who thinks about investing to someone who just does it, automatically every month, without deliberating. The amount will grow. The habit is what opens that door. And the third piece, this one surprises people, is $100 a month set aside for what I can only describe as intentional enjoyment. Not entertainment generally, not fun money in the vague, spend it on whatever sense. Intentional, planned, deliberate enjoyment of your money. A nice dinner, an experience you've been wanting, something that makes you feel like your financial life has a quality of life component, not just a deprivation component. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about financial discipline. When it feels like pure sacrifice, it breaks down. The $100 is the release valve that keeps the whole system from feeling like a punishment. So $200 friction fund, $200 investing, $100 intentional enjoyment, $500 total, and it all moves automatically on payday before you see it in your checking account. I want to spend a little time on this automation piece because I think it's genuinely the most important part and also the most frequently underestimated. There's this concept in behavioral economics, and I'll try not to get too deep in the weeds here, called decision fatigue. The basic idea is that the quality of your decisions degrades the more decisions you make. Your willpower, your self-control, your ability to override impulse, these are finite resources. They get used up. And by the time you've made 100 small decisions throughout the day, the decision of, should I put money away this month, or should I deal with that later, is way harder than it would have been at 7 a.m. What automation does is it removes the decision entirely. The money moves before you're even awake to make a choice about it. It's not about willpower anymore. It's infrastructure. And there is a profound psychological difference between a financial plan that requires you to remember and choose to act every month, and one that just runs, like a subscription, like rent, like your phone bill. Think about it this way. You don't decide every month whether to pay your rent. It's just a thing that happens. It's baked into your life as a non-negotiable. Now imagine if your savings worked the same way. If it felt as automatic and obligatory as rent. Because here's the truth, and this is something that took me a long time to fully appreciate. You will find a way to live on what's left. Human beings are extraordinarily adaptable. When the money isn't in your checking account, you stop spending it. You adjust. You order slightly less takeout. You find alternatives. You figure it out. The constraint actually produces creativity and resourcefulness, but you have to remove the money first. Saving what's left over is almost always zero, because the leftover is always spent. Okay, so we've talked about the financial mechanics, but I want to talk about something that I think is actually more valuable than the literal dollar amounts, and that's what I'd call identity compounding. Here's what I mean. When you start doing something consistently, any something, your self-image begins to shift. Slowly, then kind of all at once. If you go to the gym 3 days a week for 6 months, you stop thinking of yourself as someone who is trying to be healthy, and you start thinking of yourself as someone who is healthy. The behavior is no longer effortful, it's just who you are. The same thing happens with money. When you've been automatically saving and investing for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years, something quietly shifts. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who's trying to get their finances together, and you start thinking of yourself as someone who's financially responsible, who invests, who has savings. And that identity shift changes how you make every other financial decision. You start thinking twice before impulse purchases, not because you're being disciplined and white-knuckling through temptation, but because it genuinely doesn't align with who you think you are anymore. You think, I'm the kind of person who invests $200 a month. Would the kind of person who invests $200 a month spend $180 on that thing I'll use twice? And sometimes the answer is still yes. But it's a different quality of decision. It's conscious. It's chosen. It's not just drift. And listen, I want to be honest with you about something here. The $500 a month isn't going to make you a millionaire in 5 years. I'm not standing here doing the, if you invested $500 a month for 40 years at a 10% return you'd have calculation. Because you already know I could run that number, and you also know that's not why most people struggle with money. They don't struggle because they haven't heard a compound interest calculation. They struggle because they can't bridge the gap between knowing something is a good idea and actually doing it consistently. This habit bridges that gap. That's its primary value. The dollars are secondary to the discipline, and the discipline eventually produces a lot of dollars. I want to come back to the friction fund for a second because I think it gets underappreciated relative to the investing piece, and I think that's a mistake. Here's what most people's financial lives look like without one. Everything is going fine. They're actually doing okay, maybe even making small progress. A little saved up, some momentum building. And then the car needs brakes, or the laptop dies, or there's a medical bill, or they have to fly home for something. And that thing, that one irregular expense, wipes out 2 months of progress in an afternoon. And the devastating part isn't just the money. It's the demoralization. The feeling of, I keep trying and I keep ending up back at the same place. The story you start telling yourself about why this just doesn't work for people like you. The friction fund interrupts that cycle. It doesn't prevent life from being expensive. Life will always be expensive. But it changes what expensive life does to your financial momentum, which is everything. I talked to someone a while back, mid-30s, decent income, felt perpetually stuck, who told me that before they built their friction fund, they had put money into a savings account maybe a dozen times in 5 years, and every single time something came up and they pulled it back out, so they'd stop trying. What was the point? They started the $200 a month friction fund. Just that piece first, completely separate account. Somewhat inconvenient to access deliberately. 8 months later, the dishwasher broke. They paid for it. Account kept running. And they told me it was the first time in years they'd experienced a financial setback and didn't feel like they were starting over. That's not a small thing. That is a fundamental change in their relationship with money. From reactive to prepared. From fragile to just slightly more resilient. And resilience, financial resilience, is so underrated. People talk about wealth like it's a destination, but most of the journey is just surviving the setbacks without losing the plot. The friction fund is what keeps you in the game. Let me tell you about the part of this that I got wrong for years. For a long time, I was fully bought in on the save and invest side of this equation. And I basically had zero patience for the idea of deliberately spending money on enjoyment. It felt wasteful. It felt like I was giving up progress for pleasure. And I was pretty self-righteous about it, honestly, in a way that looking back was both annoying and financially counterproductive. Here's what I missed. Financial systems that don't have a pleasure component are like diets that don't allow any flexibility. They work for a while, then they snap. And when they snap, the rebound is usually worse than if you'd never been that strict to begin with. The $100 a month for intentional enjoyment isn't a weakness in the system. It's a structural feature that keeps the system working. Because when you know there's a portion of your money that is guilt-free, designated, already accounted for enjoyment money, the spending you do with it feels different. It doesn't carry the psychological cost that impulse spending carries, that low-grade guilt and shame that actually makes you feel worse about money even when you're technically doing fine. It's clean. You earned it. You set it aside. You enjoy it. Done. And maybe more importantly, it keeps the whole exercise from feeling like deprivation, which means you'll stick to it, which means the $200 in the friction fund keeps growing. The $200 in the investment account keeps compounding. You stay in the game. The $100 is not a reward. It's load-bearing. Treat it like one. So, here's what I want you to take away from this. The $500 a month habit isn't complicated. $200 to a friction fund, a buffer against irregular life expenses. $200 to a low-cost investment account. Slow, boring, powerful. $100 to deliberate enjoyment, the part that keeps you human and keeps the system running. All of it automated, all of it moving before your spending brain has a chance to weigh in. But I want to say something about the bigger picture because I think the numbers are almost beside the point. What this habit is really doing, underneath the savings rates and the investment accounts, is changing your relationship with time and money. Right now, if you're in that place I described at the beginning, where you're making decent money and still feeling like you're spinning your wheels, it's not because you're bad with money. It's because you haven't yet built a structure that works with your psychology instead of against it. You've been trying to out-willpower a system that wasn't designed to be will-powered. Nobody can white-knuckle their way to financial security for 30 years. But most people can set up a few automatic transfers and forget about it. The difference between the people who end up financially secure and the people who don't, in my experience, having spent way too much time thinking about this, is not usually income. It's not usually intelligence. It's not usually sacrifice and suffering. It's usually just a system, a simple, consistent, forgettable system that runs in the background while they get on with their lives. You can build that system this week, literally this week. Open a high-yield savings account, set up the automatic transfers, name the accounts so you know which pile is which. It will take you maybe 45 minutes, and then you just live your life. And a year from now, you will look at your accounts and feel something you might not have felt in a while, like you're actually going somewhere. That's what the $500 a month habit really is. It's not a money hack. It's proof to yourself, delivered slowly, month after month, that you are someone who shows up for your own future, quietly, consistently, without a lot of drama. And honestly, that changes everything. Now, if you found this video informative, press that like button, comment your thoughts, and most importantly, subscribe, and see you in the next video.